Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Derrick Bros. Thank you guys for tuning in. Whether you're listening on my Patreon account, thank you guys who show a little bit of extra love and support, or you're watching on YouTube, thank you for tuning in. I've got a special treat for you today. Interview with a good friend of mine and fellow activist and journalist, Nick Bernabe of the Anti-Media. Before we get into that, I want to remind you guys to please, if you enjoy these audio clips on Patreon, share it with your friends, invite them to sign up for as low as $1 a month to get extra content and exclusive content in addition to all the free articles that I put out there every week. And subscribe to The Conscious Resistance on Facebook, Twitter, at The Conscious RN. You can follow me at DBrosLiveFree. And yeah, that's all that stuff. So now that we got that out of the way, let me introduce you to Nick. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Doing good. So we're here in California. I'm hanging out with you for a couple of weeks. Just to catch the audience up, been on the road, New York City for 9/11. Now I came out here to San Diego to stay with the Anti-Media crew. Of course, I write for the Anti-Media, and Nick is the head honcho behind that. So let's talk a little bit about that and how you first started to get into activism. What led to the Anti-Media? Because you've been telling me more recently, about how you've kind of had this entrepreneurial, business-minded way of looking at things, and I think that's probably a big part of why the Anti-Media has been successful. So tell us about that.
Yeah, man, I've been an entrepreneur for most of my life. I grew up working in a family business, very small business, and witnessed the struggles and all that stuff going on. And then, out of high school, I kind of first started going to college at one of the local community colleges, and I kind of just got tired of it. I took one class on entrepreneurialism, and it kind of helped me realize a lot of things that maybe I hadn't connected together. And I dropped out of school after I took that class, and I basically just started my own business. And I was kind of doing stuff here and there, and legal and other means. And I won't go too far into the details on that stuff, but growing up as a young man, going through all these, entrepreneurial struggles, I got to witness a lot of the red tape and a lot of like the government action, the government intervention, the things that hold you back as a young person with a small amount of resources trying to, live the American dream, quote unquote. And so I started, that kind of led me down a path of research and looking into the political system and why things are the way they are. And that kind of all came to a head, I guess you could say, in 2011, 2012. I started really getting deeper into looking into political things, started following the election. I started, really got my first splash in politics as a Ron Paul supporter. And, anyone tuning into this can probably remember back in 2012 when the whole Ron Paul debacle went down and how he was treated first off by the media, second off by the political establishment. And that's when I realized there was something really, really wrong with our system. And at first, I knew about corruption. I knew things were messed up. I knew there was too much bureaucracy. I knew there was too much taxes. I was mad about paying taxes for shit that I didn't believe in, like the wars and all that kind of thing. So after witnessing, someone who I kind of resonated with, Ron Paul, I really liked him on foreign policy, on the wars, on the banking system, on the Federal Reserve, the monetary system, things like that. I really kind of got motivated to get involved myself. And after the falling out there with Ron Paul and after everything that happened with the 2012 election and seeing just how controlled it was by the media, I was inspired to start the Anti-Media. And I felt like, I was hoping by the time 2016 came around, I was hoping that I'd be able to build some kind of media operation that would at least make some kind of influence over the outcome of 2016. Now, along that journey, I've grown a little further into the realm of statelessness and things like that, and I'm really no longer pursuing the trying to get any one candidate or another to win in politics. More or less now, what we do at the Anti-Media is just expose the system for what it is without choosing a horse in any of these races. Even the independent candidates, we don't really pick any sides on it. Really what we're trying to do is show, exactly what's wrong. Why is it that young people can't make their way through this quote unquote American dream? Why do young people go to college and end up with so much debt? Why aren't there very many jobs out there for kids when they get out of college? Why is, there's so many wars going on and all that stuff. This is the stuff that now we're concerned about at the Anti-Media, really trying to bring that to light, bring it to the forefront of people's minds, and hopefully help people realize really what's going on.
So one of the things that I really enjoy about the Anti-Media, and it's the antimedia.org. We're good. It's the antimedia.org for those of you who've not been there. If you don't follow them on Facebook, definitely follow the page. So what I really like about it, though, is as somebody who's writing for multiple websites, and I've told you this, in other conversations, that it gives me a chance to write in different voices, and the Anti-Media voice of me is that more, to me it's always felt like this more rebellious mentality, but still hard-hitting. Like we have an awesome team of writers. I mean, just there's the amount of people that are involved, and now expanding to the UK and things like that. It's just, to me, it's amazing to be a part of the team. But we have this nice range of writers who have a wide range of knowledge as well, but we are able to interject, like you said, our attitude into there. And to me, what we've learned a lot about as far as what the old stream calls objectivism, I've learned a lot through listening and watching people like Ben Swan, who essentially say, like, when you go to journalism school, it's really just to teach you to be a broadcaster, and that they use this idea of objectivity as a way to limit what people can talk about. And I see myself as a journalist, and as an activist, as a storyteller, is basically trying to give people more information, and just instead of just telling them, hey, this is what's happening, just this one isolated piece of information, put it in the context of other things that are going on. And yes, at the same time, really try to have like a rallying call to get people to to take some type of action. So what was the beginning of the Anti-Media? You said around 2012, and now we're looking at it's 1,080,000 people have liked the page. I mean, how has it grown so quickly, and why is it that you have now come to be known as a social media guru for the ability to help grow pages? You were also involved with the March Against Monsanto and its growth as well. So how has the response been? It's obviously been good, but how was it for you?
I had started, once I had started getting like more or less politically active, I had several Facebook pages, none of which got, did much. And it was weird, man. I just came up with a name one day for the Anti-Media, and I came up with a meme, and I posted it, and it went viral. And it was weird how that happened. The first day, we had like 600 followers, and then in 2 days we had 1,000, and it just started going up, and we just started criticizing the system, man, and that's all we were doing. And so, for me, I think what it really goes to show is that there's a lot of people out there that feel this way. There's a lot of people out there that don't trust the system. They feel left out by the system. They feel cheated by the system in many ways, by whether we're talking about the justice system, the school system, the police, the politicians, the taxes. I mean, there's so many different reasons why so many different people are kind of have a grievance with the way things are. And so we post, as you were saying, we have a really big team, and we have a really diverse voice at the Anti-Media. We're not just about one ideology or one way of thinking or one candidate, as we mentioned earlier. It's very diverse, whether we're talking from left to right, full spectrum people that are just very anti-establishment, have their own way of critiquing the system, because it's not just one people that think one certain way that have been left out by the system. It's everybody, right? And so there's all these different voices out there. There's all these different people out there in the audience that have been, that have gone through a different situation than everybody else has, and so they have their own grievances. And so we try to provide a really wide-ranging voice and a platform for journalists to get their knowledge out there and let their skills be really broadcast directly to the public without us trying to morph your voice, and that's one of the things that we really take a pride in at the Anti-Media is really letting the journalists have a lot of free reign when it comes to what they want to write about and how they want to how they want to present their ideas, and so we purposely hire like really people from like really all sides of the spectrum, so that we can have a very open debate out there regarding ideas and solutions and reasons why things are messed up, because we all know something's wrong. Everybody's got a different way of feeling about it, everybody's got a different way of fixing it, and everybody's got a different way of addressing it.
So it's also like, one thing that I want to make clear to those who are listening is when you start to look into journalism, it's like any other field of study. It's got multiple branches and different schools of thought. So this objective school that we hear from the Associated Press and Reuters and others, and you hear people condemned if they ever express their opinion or have a feeling about something. Like, I think that is a failed model, and maybe it still works for some people. This is not to say that everything should be just completely opinionated. People should be aware of what they're reading. When you go to the anti-media, you're definitely going to get the writer's attitude with it, but they're reporting factual stuff. And you don't have to agree with exactly their insight or their analysis of what they're seeing or what the bigger picture is. But it's important, I think, to have that and understand that it's not just about it doesn't discredit somebody for doing that, because there's subjective schools of journalism. There's the gonzo journalism, citizen journalism, and people like Glenn Greenwald really promote this idea of adversarial journalism, like openly, we show our biases. We are anti-establishment, being openly adversarial against, the state, the surveillance state, the government, and not just accepting like these so-called objective schools of journalists, like just accept like when a government employee says, oh, hey, this is what's going to happen, and then they report according to an anonymous government employee, like basically getting past the point where we're willing to just trust them and what they say and being questioning about that. And I think that's important to understand, because I've often run into certain people who think that because you put a little bit of color with yourself into that it discredits the information, or you're not a real journalist or whatever. I think that's an important point to make.
Yeah, and one thing about our articles, man, is like you said, there's hyperlinks. There's dozens of hyperlinks in many of these articles, and all the facts are there laid out. I mean, many of them source back to scientific research. Many of them source back to firsthand accounts, video, government statements, leaked documents, FOIA requests, declassified information, things like that. There may be some analysis in there that you may disagree with, but the facts are there, and you can click through the hyperlinks and decide for yourself.
Yeah, and it's also what I'm finding more, and I know in my own personal work, and I think that it seems like this is what the direction that bigger independent and alternative media outlets like the anti-media are able, you talked about this massive growth that happened, and being able to take that massive growth and capitalize on it and turn the anti-media into a full-on operation now, where we've got all kinds of writers, you've got full-time editors and graphics people and social media people, and just a whole team of us that are really making this happen. So, we see the ability to do that and to turn this into this full operation. I see what's going to continue to happen is as we get more resources and continue to grow and it turns into a sustainable model, it won't simply be us just doing secondhand reporting with analysis or covering stories that the old stream media is ignoring, but it's going to be more and more with our own, like you said, firsthand accounts, our interviews that we're going out and doing, like, because the media won't cover these stories. And that's what's happening more and more. Like, we're not just bloggers, we're not just rehashing stuff that you've already heard. Like, we're giving you fuller pictures, and at the same time we're going and asking those questions like that the mainstream won't or doesn't care to, and covering the stories.
Exactly, man. And the thing about us is that we're not sold out like Vice did, to Fox, and we don't have millions of dollars in resources to do a lot of things.
We'll never be getting a visit from Joe Biden or Obama to the anti-media headquarters.
No, not here. But what I can tell you is that we have a bunch of awesome people out there that help us. I don't consider people that are fans of our work followers. I think of them as part of the team, and they're willing to get out there and help us crowdsource the videos and the information and the photos, and send us stories, send us accounts. People can submit news tips to our website, and that's how we gather a lot of this information from tips from the team. And the people that are fans of the operation are really just part of the team, and it's a team effort to spread and distribute the information once we do get it out there in the form of an article or a video, whatever it is. It's all part of the team effort to get it out there and spread it to your friends and family so that everyone can kind of be aware of this information. Because this is the thing, this is really valuable information because it's suppressed, more or less. The old stream media is not talking about it. The government's not talking about it. Hardly anyone wants to talk about it. So this stuff is really valuable. It's important for people to know. Back to your point about the adversarial journalism, and I couldn't agree with you anymore. And the point I want to make here is that in the face of like tyranny and authoritarianism, militarism, corporatism, and whatever the isms are that we're up against right now, there's not much room to be unbiased about that stuff,
Yeah.
And so I think adversarial journalism right now in the U.S. and any other place where you're dealing with massive statism and corporatism and corruption and oligarchy and all these things, I think being an adversarial journalist is probably one of the most noble professions out there. Look at Saudi Arabia. People get their heads cut off for this kind of stuff, and so it's really dangerous, actually, in some ways, especially in many countries just south of the border here. We're in San Diego. Literally, if you go like 15 minutes south, you're in Tijuana, and it's a really unsafe place for journalists. Mexico, it's one of the most violent places in the world for journalists. Hundreds of them are killed every year because they criticize the drug cartels or the government and things like that. So adversarial journalism, it's something that the government really fears, and the problem is the governments are normally oppressing people. So therefore, adversarial journalists are on the side of the general public, and they need more support. People like Glenn Greenwald, thankfully, someone like that has somewhat of a celebrity appeal, and he was able to get the Snowden documents and all that stuff, and that helped boost this type of journalism up a notch. Because before Greenwald, before The Intercept, there really wasn't a big news outlet out there that was really going hard at the corruption side of things. Of course, there's a bunch of little small grassroots media outlets like us that are out there pulling the workload. But thankfully, we got The Intercept now that's coming along and helping us do this really what I consider a civil duty, more or less.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sites like that help us increase our reach. It helps spread this information to more of a mainstream audience. And I really think it's a movement that's getting stronger. I think there's more and more journalists out there every day. There's more and more people out there using live stream and Periscope and all these streaming apps and Twitter and Facebook and all these things. This is the thing that's going to, sooner or later, it will truly undermine the mainstream narratives that are going on. I mean, it's already happening.
Yeah.
One of the things that really led to my strength in social media was the No War with Syria rallies, and we helped. Our team at the Anti-Media helped design that viral campaign, and it was really an open source anti-war movement. Unfortunately, it kind of faded away after a while, and then they were able to switch things up on us, and ISIS came along, and they still got their way into Syria. But at least for that time being, we were able to put a stop to it. And that's really where I think that the journalism and the activism can combine. There's things, militarism, empire. I mean, these things. There's not much room for trying to stay out of the fight here. It's like you're either fighting against our empire and trying to bring it to a halt and stopping millions of innocent lives from dying, or you're sitting on the sidelines. And if you're writing for Yahoo or whatever, and you're kind of just out there puppeting the government narrative, and you're regurgitating the WMD lie for Iraq, for instance. I mean, that was the last really big one. Then you're on the sidelines. In fact, you're probably working on the other team. So I really think that the role of adversarial journalism is really, really important in the country, and it needs more support.
Absolutely. I've had experience with that locally, where just having to fight my way to get into press sessions with the Houston Police Department chief and his little assistant liaison officer, in a roundabout way, threatening me but not threatening me, and basically just encouraging me not to question the chief so much. And I had to tell him, like, look, I can respect you as a human being, and we can be polite and all that, but my job is to expose you and the lies that you guys are telling. So that means whenever I know the chief's lying, I'm not going to write that he won't confirm or deny when I know he's lying. and I don't call torture enhanced interrogation. Like I don't use their language, and I think that's a big important part as well. Like rejecting their terms, the way that they try to couch them in these like little soft phrases that get people detached from what's really going on. It's important for us to call it what it is. And yeah, so that's really important with what we're doing, and I've seen that going and reporting on trials from the Silk Road to Barrett Brown, and seeing these journalists who go in there, and I don't know. I mean, I just don't see how they can be as unaffected as they claim to be. And if they aren't unaffected, then they're just being fake. They're being hypocritical, and like you said, I think it's at the point where we need to call it out. But I want to.
A lot of these guys aren't allowed to be affected. You know what I mean?
You'll get fired.
They may personally be, but the stuff that they end up putting out there, it can't be, because they just won't. They won't have any work to do. They won't.
It's because at the higher levels, like the editors of the bigger papers and stuff, they're all either, I don't want to say necessarily controlled, or just pressured to not let certain messages. Like I will say this, just kind of off the record, that I've talked to Ben, and Ben's back in Atlanta working for CBS. Ben Swan doing the primetime anchor thing, and one of the things he's told me in the past is just how he does the reality check reports, which I always do really well, and that's what first got him notoriety, and that's the only reason anybody knows about that Fox station in Cincinnati is because of him, or about this CBS station in Atlanta is because of his work. So those are always really well done reports, but he'll tell me about how sometimes they'll say like, oh, we can't do a Clinton video or a insert candidate, because the sponsors are more Democrat in this area or more Republican or whatever, and just how the people that work there, they don't question things. They get like these stories about a puppy dog or some local BS story. You know what I mean? It's all fluff, and so they're not investigators. They're not looking for deeper things, and so he was just expressing how frustrating that can be. And we've all heard stories of that from like Amber Lyon and other people who've worked in the mainstream.
There was a guy just 2 weeks ago. No, maybe it was about a month ago. He was working and he was working at one of these small mainstream, I think it was like a Fox affiliate or something like that in one of these towns in Florida. And he walked off the set because they wouldn't stop talking about Kim Kardashian. He was like, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm walking. I'm done. I'm walking away.
That's what we need. We need more rejecting of that culture.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears for a moment, though. Whoop. I want to talk about some of the things we've been touching on the past couple of days, because we're discussing the power of journalism right now and the ability for that to help spread information and to get it out to the masses. And I think that both of us, and I know for me as a journalist and as a writer, it's like my hope is that every time an article is getting 20,000 or whatever amount of views, that those people then are spurred on to action, either in their local community or just by sharing articles. Information spreads and it grows and awareness comes. And it gets to the point where these things are no longer acceptable and people, just will not take it. And so I have goals like that, but also, we've been discussing, for example, the debates that are going on, and just how I think we both can agree that during these election seasons, which seems to start earlier and earlier, that it's just a really, really easy time to divide the country. And we've been seeing that so much, not only just with the debates and the elections that are still more than a year away, but with things like Black Lives Matter, like people choosing one side or the other, and the media more than happy to exploit the differences and to really just try to isolate people. And last night I posted something on Facebook that was analyzing what some people it was referring to as cultural libertarianism, which is basically people who just think that anything goes, and we shouldn't. Basically, the opposite of what's known as a social justice warrior. Somebody that's fighting for like sexism, racism, classism, and just showing this article that really tried to show how these two sides actually have a lot in common if they would just reject the authoritarian views on both ends, get rid of the people that are all about social justice, that want to force people, to have their view, or that they want to use violence to spread their message, or just hate and whatever, and the people on the other side to be more compassionate and aware of these other needs and not just outright reject them. So my point is that we see this division happening, and I'm always trying to focus on solutions. And so we're chipping away at the media aspect of it, but even among the articles, we were just commenting earlier, for example, like there's an article that has a Muslim person in there. It talks about Islam, and it's in a positive light. People will comment and say really racist things or reject it, and I feel like the atmosphere in this country has just gotten extremely divided, and that makes it more difficult to organize as an activist, and I think it makes it a dangerous climate as well for people who have unpopular opinions. You know, it's just this hysteria that really can sweep the nation, and it really freaks me out. So I don't know your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, man. I mean, candidates like Trump have spurred up a bunch of anti-Mexican, anti-Latino sentiment. A lot of it was already, a lot of this stuff is already there. People already feel this way. It's just drawn out into the mainstream because Trump's talking about it. One thing I want to just throw out there first, just so I just want to make sure people don't get discouraged by all this horrible shit they see online. I saw something on my own newsfeed yesterday where someone was just basically saying, when the Muslims show up as refugees in Europe, just kill them or sink their boats or take the children and kill the men. I'm not even, this is literally in my own newsfeed with people who claim to be, at least in some way or another an activist, and I'm just like thinking like, wow, I can't believe people on my own newsfeed, I can't believe I've added people as friends or people have added me as friends after seeing my work and oh yeah, this guy seems like, I don't know exactly why people add you as a friend on Facebook, but I'm guessing it's because they see your articles or they see something you've done and they like, oh, I'd like to add that person as a friend. But here's the thing. I think, first of all, in order to not be discouraged, it's important to remember that oftentimes it's the most ignorant people that are the loudest ones. It's the dumbest people that are the loudest ones. It's the most militant people that are the loudest ones, and that's not always a bad thing. But in many cases it is, and it makes me want to fall into the stereotype where I'm like, you know what? All these conservatives are Islamophobes. You know what I mean? Because I see that there is a bunch of, when I go on Fox News posts or InfoWars posts or whatever, and I read the comments, and I know these people are conservatives, and I see them saying these horrible things, my first instinct is like, after a while, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, like all these conservative guys are just xenophobic. But that's definitely not the case, and you got to take a step back and remember that it's not. Not everyone feels that way. It's just the handful of people out of the crowd that are willing to say this really dumb shit. These are probably the ones that only are the very, very few people that actually feel really strongly about that. Most people I know in real life, most people that are my acquaintances that aren't even at all part of the fight against tyranny or anything like that, are not xenophobic, they're not Islamophobic, they're not racist, they're not any of this stuff. Most people aren't. But, it's really easy to see people online and take over threads and, call people that are social justice warriors a bunch of bad names, and then vice versa, people on the other side calling people that are, libertarians that don't care as much about that stuff just a bunch of greedy idiots. This stuff gets thrown all around, but in reality, most people are much more compassionate and much more logical in real life than they are online. So that's something to keep in mind.
Also, what about the idea that, I feel like we've called out, and I know we have articles on the website, and we're all aware that the government, different government agencies, I know for sure the Navy, have the ability to make these sock puppet accounts where like one person can control like 10 different fake profiles. So we also have to consider the possibility that, again, as typical, the media is pushing a narrative which is, the right, quote unquote right. These terms are, these sides are, pushing the narrative that's going to cause division, like you said, spreading hate from one side to the other, one spectrum, one extreme to the other, and then, you've got not only the people who aren't really that intelligent who do go along with that and generally feel that, because make no mistake, racist, bigoted people are just, I don't think that they're necessarily idiots, but I think they have an error in their thinking, and so it's easy to exploit that. Those people will kind of come out of the woodwork, but also maybe these sock puppet accounts, these fake accounts, are doing their best to go online and to spread as much vitriol as they can to sort of create this atmosphere, not only of division, but that it makes people feel that way, who really are that way, feel safe, like it's okay for them to come out. And then you've got somebody like Trump stepping into the limelight and spreading his hate, and it just creates this whole atmosphere where all of a sudden, like, these supposedly all these Americans are like, ready to have this angry hate, and I definitely understand that there are some hateful people in this world and in this country, and it's everywhere, and that the issues are extremely complicated. There's multiple layers to this, so it's not really so simple. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at, though, is that these issues aren't so simple, and some people try to see them as black and white, and then when you look at it from black and white, then yeah, you have an enemy and you are right and they are wrong. And that's just how it goes. But it's not always that simple. It's rarely that simple, you know. And so
yeah, I've seen
we have to look deeper.
I've seen a lot of sock puppet action lately, and as you said, it's following up on this divide and conquer plan that's rolling out right now in the media, spearheaded by Trump and his cohorts. I mean, these are tactics that are tried and true, man. These guys did this stuff in Iraq following the 2001 invasion. There was very, very, very little sectarianism going on in Iraq for decades under Saddam Hussein's rule. And as the U.S. began the invasion, even prior to it, there was now documented, thanks to recently released documents, that showed that they played a divide and conquer scheme against the population in Iraq. And we're talking about civilians. And what they did was they pinned Shia against Sunni, and then Sunni against Sunni, and Shia against Shia, and they just kept slicing the pot. And they were just they would have little miniature false flag attacks, and this is documented stuff. This isn't conspiracy theory anymore. They would go and there would be little bombings in neighborhoods, and they'd blame it on the Shia, and then the Sunnis would take action, and then it would divide and conquer and made a bunch of people hate each other. And now we see the results of it. It's still going on to this day. How many times do you see suicide bombings in Baghdad? How many times do you see bombings in Iraq just between two different religious groups? You know what I mean? Because this divide and conquer strategy was able to come to maturation. It actually played out. So I think that's why it's so important right now with this journalism stuff to counter these narratives, man, because this stuff can turn really dangerous really quickly. And it's not just, they're just, playing the race card here and there, and they're just doing this and they're doing that, and both sides are doing it. It's not just that simple, and it's not that innocent. It could lead to a lot of people getting hurt and a lot of people getting killed. The most recent incident is that kid, Ahmed Mohammed, that 14-year-old kid that built that clock that, his teachers turned him into the school thinking he was a terrorist. That kind of stuff, it's because of this divide and conquer strategy. Little kids like that are having this, who knows what's going to happen to this kid now, It's probably made him feel like, even in the video that he put out there, he feels like he's not even human or not even a person. I mean, now he's going to be dealing with all this fame and all this is going to really drastically change his life. I mean, hopefully for the better, but, the fact of the matter is it all started because there's all this fear-mongering going on by the media, divide and conquer. It's like, either you like America or you like Muslims, and you can't do both. And you can't be compassionate about refugees, because if you are, then you hate America. And this is the kind of divide and conquer thing they're trying to put out there. And it's working, for a lot of people. And unfortunately, it's for a lot of the older people that watch a lot of TV, and a lot of the less informed people, and truthfully, a lot of the less intelligent people as well, that fall right for this reactionary stuff. People that are really smart don't buy into the reactionary stuff as quickly. They can still fall for it, especially if there's enough of a crowd going around that's really pushing these things out, and you can't help but fall victim to the crowd. But I think that's why now is more important than ever, because we're coming to a point it's a really, really dangerous point. I can't remember a time in my life where there's been more really angry people. They're angry, rightfully so, for many reasons, right? And it kind of goes to show with Trump's campaign. I hate to go back to him, but there's a lot of people out there that are angry at the system, and they don't know why. They don't know what's actually wrong. And so therefore, when someone like Trump says, it's the Mexicans' problem, it's their fault, it's so easy for people to buy into that, because they're looking for something to... Yeah. They're latching onto anything that'll explain why things are messed up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, it's our job to go and make sure that we give them actual valid ideas, valid solutions that are going to lead to less statism, less empire in the long run. One thing that really has kept my head up for a long time is keeping all this stuff in perspective and keeping a scale on this stuff, because we got to keep in mind that the fight for freedom, it's not something that started in the 60s. It's not something that started in the American Revolution. It's not something that started with the Magna Carta. It didn't start with the Greek philosophers or anybody like that. The fight for freedom has been going on for as long as we know it. We know humanity, man. They've always been fighting for it. And so it's a eternal battle that's got to be fought. I know plenty of activists that get discouraged after just 6 months, and they're like, well, nothing's changed, I'm giving up. 6 months is nothing compared to the tens of thousands of years that our ancestors have been alive, having to go and deal with people always trying to put, coercion over top of them, and control them, and or steal from them, or tax them, or kill them, or whatever. This stuff all of our ancestors have had to deal with. Fortunately, here in the U.S., we have a relative amount of basic freedoms, like freedom of speech. Thankfully, you and me can sit here right here at this table, record this, throw it online, and who knows how many people can actually listen to it. That's one of the freedoms we have left, but that's another one that's quickly being eroded. You know what I mean? The right to a fair trial is going away. The right to privacy is already pretty much dead. The right to travel freely is going away. I mean, checkpoints everywhere, and we're going to go through one tomorrow on our way up to LA. You'll see it.
Oh, that'll be fun.
And so we'll see what happens there. So, but luckily we still have this freedom, man. We got to use it while we do, and if we don't, it could go away, be taken away.
I absolutely agree, and that's why it's just that I wanted to make the point, the importance of getting past the division. One last thing I want to talk about with you before we end this is I mentioned earlier that I've been on the road, went to New York for 9/11, and now I'm out here in San Diego. Tomorrow, as Nick just said, we're headed towards LA. This weekend, we're going to be on Saturday, the 19th, we're going to be at the Free and Equal United We Stand Festival for the second year. This is the second year it's being held. It's in LA at the Belasco Theater, and it's going to feature activists, journalists, a bunch of awesome musicians, and Nick and I will be speaking on an independent media panel. I'll be representing the conscious resistance, and Nick will be representing the anti-media. So if you're hearing this before then, absolutely come out, and you're in the LA area, come out. But what I really wanted to comment on is, for me, I've seen since the beginning of my activism, because even before my activism I was involved organizing events, just always been involved in kind of organizing things and putting on benefit shows for local causes, like raising money. I just been well connected with music, and so I wanted to use that music and use my interest in that entrepreneurial spirit again, like booking, having that business side to music for something that was good. And the first show I did, we raised $300 or $400 for this Houston's women's shelter, and so doing things like that. And then eventually, once I started to have my waking up experience and started to get into the politics, I put the music aside, started the Free Thinkers, and got into all that. But it only took about 6 or 7, maybe 8 months before I realized I can combine these two things together. And so we started holding monthly benefit shows, anti-drug war shows, and we'd partner up with Houston Normal, and half the money would go to them, half the money would go to us, and anti-war shows, just did all kinds of things and raised a few $1,000s for different groups. And what I've always seen is that music and the arts are, if you look at revolutions around the world, and a real revolution, the people rising up, whether through violence or through other means, sometimes it's just an intellectual revolution, a philosophical revolution. The music and the arts have a big part of that. And I think also you look at the history of governments in the States and their attempts to control people's creativity, which to me I think is another reason why they suppress cannabis and psychedelics, and they've spied upon everyone from Tupac to John Lennon to Bob Marley, George Carlin, people involved in these people who are creating music and art that can reach the masses, and that music can make you feel something powerful. And so when that music is focused on social justice or just revolutionary ideas, it can have a big, powerful effect when that many people are listening. So to me, the importance cannot be understated again of having awareness of having a cultural revolution. This is because, again, I think that the powers that wish they were, that are behind the scenes, that work with the corporations and the governments and other people and banks and other influential positions, that these people understand they put this false culture out. And it's not even just an American thing, it's this false culture that exists, because you see it happening in other nations that have rich histories and pasts, and then they kind of start wearing the same American style dress. But it's not just American, it's just all these corporate companies, we're all dressing the same, wearing the same products, buying the same products, using the same stores.
It's a global PR campaign, right?
And it's this fake, it just feels really to me like a hollow culture. It's nothing real, but because it's not ours, it's nothing that we're creating. All those ways are being lost, or we're having to come up with our own new ways. So it's this corporate government state culture that I think is fabricated. And music and art is a beautiful way to just connect to people and to get past that. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on the importance of that and things like United We Stand and and how that might possibly help. Obviously, the youth, getting the youth. I mean, we're young dudes ourselves, but getting like high school kids, junior high kids, thinking about real world issues. Music is a powerful tool for that.
Yeah, I think music is one of like the best avenues for transmitting information, basically. And music can like break down barriers. Music is more or less universal. Of course, you have your different niches inside of music, but it really does come down to a cultural side of things, and that's exactly why the government tries to co-opt the pop culture and tries to dictate that out to us. Recent example with that is how the CIA had a hand in producing Zero Dark 30, a recent Hollywood blockbuster movie. So the government really does take plays a major role in dictating the rhythm of the pop culture and things like that. And as you said, it's mostly corporate driven, putting out all these junk clothing and junk music and all this crap they want to sell us. They sell it out to us through the pop culture, and while at the same time feeding us a bunch of messages, intellectually that are pretty much worthless in many ways. I mean, we think about recent lyrics in song music. There's a recent data that showed that the average song lyrics are like at a middle school level or something, even less, I think. And
I remember that.
Yeah, and so, I mean, there's no doubt that there's somewhat of a deliberate dumbing down being kind of perpetuated by the pop culture, and that's why it's so important for things like the Free and Equal United We Stand Fest to exist, is because they're combining musicians that actually have a message that actually means something, whether it be anti-war or just pro-love or equality or whatever it is. Combining that and combining it with a kind of activism type event, I think is a really powerful thing, really positive thing, so people can get out there for the music, or they can get out there for the activists or the speakers that they want to hear, and then they can be exposed to either the music or to the activists that they may or may not have actually ever been exposed to. So it's a great way of like culture jamming, I think, and it's a great way to really spread ideas both musically and politically and on the information side of things. It's a huge resource that's being very, very much untapped right now. I know you guys are doing it in Houston with the For the Community event, and I went to that last year, and I'm going this year as well. And it was an amazing event, man. I was blown away by it. And I think we need more of that, like everywhere and all the time, every week. I mean, even in every town, every city. That would do a lot for helping not only spread the ideas of statelessness, the ideas of anti-statism. That's really the most important one out there. I mean, and that would go a far way in supporting local media outlets like all the ones that we work with. It would do a lot for our culture. It would do a lot for our local economy. I know you guys had a bunch of these really awesome vendors out there and stuff like that too, and reconnecting our roots to our local economies and stuff like that, cutting the corporate message out as well. And so what we're talking about here by supporting things like this, and what we're talking about is combining the arts with the activism. Supporting things like that, it's way more than just, I saw a cool band, or I got to hear some guy speak. You're economically taking it on, philosophically, culturally. I mean, it's a huge thing. It's way bigger than people realize, and I think it's something that needs to just start getting a lot more support, a lot bigger, a lot more people everywhere. I don't care if you're just listening to this and you're in some random town somewhere. You should try starting something like this in your own place.
Start an open mic or something.
Yeah, dude, we really need it, because right now people are being susceptible to this corporate programming, and it's destroying basically everything that we think is good.
Absolutely. Well, we've covered a lot of ground tonight. I think we're just about ready to wrap it up. You have anything else you want to add? Any message you'd like to send out there to the listeners before we sign off?
Well, yeah, I mean, just to finish up on the last thoughts I was having, I mean, not only with the event we were just talking about, but with all this stuff we talked about tonight, it's not as much as starting some kind of mass movement. We've had success before with the March Against Monsanto, No War with Syria. Those were mass movements, and they were cool. They had their own flaws, their own downfalls. As I mentioned, the government still ended up going into Syria in a backdoor fashion So we didn't end up stopping that from happening. It's not as much anymore from all the experience I've had doing all this stuff. It's not as much about mass movements as much as it is about just individuals and local, people coming together, networks, small networks, decentralized networks. Whenever a network gets too big, too centralized, definitely got a potential to be flawed or corrupted or sold out, hijacked, co-opted, you name it. So I think having really small decentralized networks, locally based, and creating, whether it's music networks, trading, bartering, economics, whatever it is. I mean, black market stuff, you name it, like doing that kind of thing. I think that's the most important thing, starting with yourself, your family, your friends, changing your habits, changing the way you shop, changing the way you eat, changing the way, especially changing the way you vote. All those things go a long way. And I don't think we need to. I think the time is over where we should wait around for some savior or some big event to happen. I think it's more or less a time that people start taking responsibility to become their own savior, more or less, and start working on things locally. And that's really the best way to do it, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here today. That was Nick Bernabe of the Anti-Media. Be sure to follow the Anti-Media on Facebook and check out all the articles at theantimedia.org. You've been listening to The Conscious Resistance with Derrick Bros. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. You can find me on Facebook if you ever want to chat. And until next time, if you can hear this, you are the resistance. Peace.